Hello, I have the lovely Sue with me today. Hiya, Sue. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yep. My name is Sue Kittow. I write non-fiction. I've been a journalist and researcher and author, and I've written 5 books. They're Cornish literary themed walks books. So I did walks books after each each of my some of my favourite inspirational authors. So I did Walks in the Footsteps of Daphne du Maurier, Poldark, Rosamund Pilcher, Cornish writers in general, and then one called Discover Cornwall. And then I got a bit fed up of writing walks books, not doing the walks, but of doing the books. And I got a bit fed up with my publishers actually. And I was halfway through writing Walks in the Footsteps of Cornish artists, which I wasn't enjoying doing, when the pandemic came along. So obviously I couldn't do any interviews and I couldn't do much walking either. So that got me out of that one. And then I realised what was missing was I was really looking forward to writing fiction again. So I started writing fiction again, and my first novel, The Rescue, came out the year before last, and then the sequel, Lanie's Tale, came out last November, and I'm editing Hunger, which is coming out either end of this year or the beginning of next. And I should add, The Rescue and Lanie's Tale are both written from the point of view of woman's best friend, terrier Mole. But the Hunger is a different one, and that's a standalone at the moment. It does have dogs in it, but it's not the same. So, and then I've got, yes, there will be a sequel to Hunger, and then I'm sort of thinking about the one after that. So I've got quite a lot going on in my head at the moment.
Crikey, yeah. What made you decide to write the very first time you sat down and started to write your non-fiction books? What made you think, okay, today's the day where I'm going to really go for it?
Well, I suppose I was a journalist. I did a lot of work for Cornwall Today, and I did just about everything for them, which was great. And then I realised that they did a walk once a month, and I thought, oh, that might be quite nice because I've got a dog and get me out and about. So I sort of studied how they'd done it, and it was quite complicated. But I thought, oh, well, I'll have a go at that. So I did, and it took ages the first walk. It was very hot, and I took a friend with me. Sorry, see my neighbour up the road. And I took a neighbour with me, and she took some photographs, and I took a notepad and pen, which is probably the worst thing you can possibly take to write a walk with. And anyway, it took ages. My poor dog was sitting there going, God, it's hot, come on. And then, of course, I had to write it all up. And anyway, my editor liked it very much and said, would you like to do some more? And so I said yes, and I ended up doing the walks for several years, which actually I really enjoyed because I got paid for doing it. I got paid petrol, and I always took a friend with me. We always had a really good day out, and it was a really nice way of exploring Cornwall. So after I'd done I'm probably getting on for about 100 walks, I thought, well, I'll see if I can, get them published, which wasn't as easy as I thought it might be. But eventually, a small press in Wales came along and said, yes, we'd love to publish them. And so it went from there. And they were quite happy to carry on publishing me. But as I said, I was just going to be, I needed to do something different, really. And luckily, COVID enabled me to do that in a weird way.
Yeah, you and many others, me included, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So your Lanie's Tale books, what made you decide to do it from the point of view of a dog? Because obviously that's quite unique.
It's actually a friend of mine. I was in real life, Mole, who narrates the books. Mole died in 2020. Hang on, 2020. That's right, August 2020. And I was having a drink with a friend about a month later, and she said, "Oh, what happened?" And it was all to do with after my husband had died, and dogs really keep you going through difficult times, don't they? And I was talking to her about it, and my love life had been sort of quite eventful anyway. And she said, "Oh, you should write about it." And I said, "Oh, don't be silly. No, it's much too personal. I can't do that." And anyway, some of the people are still around. And she said, "Well, you can just make it up." And I said, oh, well, no, I don't think so. And then she said, you should write about it from Mole's point of view. And I said, no, 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 that's bonkers, no. And then, it's like you sort of mull things round in your head. And as I mulled it round over the next sort of week, I ended up going from thinking she's absolutely nuts to thinking, actually, that's really quite a good idea because it hasn't really been done before for adults. And so it was Pauline's idea. And then, of course, it was actually quite a challenge to do it because dogs communicate mostly through their noses. So I had to sort of think, what does happiness smell like? What does sickness smell like? What does what does everything smell like, really? Emotion. What do emotions smell like? So that was, I haven't got a hope in hell of one knowing if I'm right or not, but it was quite interesting and quite a challenge to do it.
But then if you don't, then no one else does either. So
Well, no, there is that.
I mean, I wouldn't have a clue. So yeah.
No, exactly.
I lost my dog in 2021 and he's always there.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, so I've always got him with me. Yeah,
Yeah.
he doesn't leave me. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's lovely.
But I
Yeah.
never would have thought of, I just thought I wanted to kill someone, and that's how I wrote a book. So different minds.
Yeah. Yes, I didn't want to kill anyone, but and the challenge to do it was, do it such a way that made it believable rather than people reading it thinking, oh God, she's nuts. So yes, that was the challenge.
And then did you try and go for a publisher for those, or did you self-publish?
I I my editor said, oh, I think she was really, really enthusiastic about it and said, I don't think I'll have any trouble getting an agent, publisher, blah, blah, blah. But I sent it off to various agents, and I think they all seem to like it, but because it's different, you know what the publishing industry is like. No one really wants to do anything different. They want to have something that they know or they hope will sell. And so after a while, I thought, well, my mum had died and left me a bit of money, and I thought, well, this is what I really want to do. And I wasn't sure because there are a lot of people around there who'll take your money and rip you off basically. And then extraordinarily, I met another journalist friend, and her mum had just died, and she'd self-published in 2019. And she said, well, I did it, and I made some money out of it, and if you'd like me to share my contacts, I'll be very happy to. And it just sort of seemed to work. And then my editor said, oh, if you want someone to design your cover, my sister-in-law is a really good graphic designer. And it all just sort of fell into place. And obviously it's a lot quicker because, well, you know what the publishing industry is like. It takes a long time from sort of acceptance to actually getting the book in your hands. So that's why I decided to self-publish. And then it was a huge learning curve. But having done it once, I sort of thought, well, I know what to do now. It's sort of a question of getting your team in place. And so that's, yeah, and so it was sort of relatively easy doing Lanie's Tale because I knew what I had to do, or what everyone else had to do rather, once I'd written it. So yeah, and I think a lot of people are finding that's about, I don't know about you, and I know you've just got a book deal, which is fantastic. But I've got a few friends who are traditionally published with sort of some of the bigger, HarperCollins and people, and there's a lot of sort of unease about the whole thing, people getting dropped left, right and centre, and it's a very difficult business. So at least if you're self-published, obviously you've got to cough up the money first, but at least you're in control of the whole thing, which has quite a lot to be said for it.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Is the control. Unfortunately for me, the issue was financial. I couldn't afford a cover designer, I couldn't afford an editor and stuff, so
No,
I had to find someone to do it for me. Yeah, that was the only reason really. Otherwise I would have considered, because I've seen people that have self-published and done really well, but it was just financial. So
yeah,
but a small press, they're not quite such an issue, I don't think. They're brand new, so we'll see.
brilliant. Well, I really look forward to reading yours.
It's dark.
That's right. Thrillers are supposed to be, aren't they?
Yeah, I done a noir at the bar in St Albans, and I read out the first chapter, and a lady came up to me afterwards and said it's really disturbing. And I was standing there thinking, okay, it gets a lot worse than the first chapter. So maybe you like the first chapter's nothing really, but yeah, I was like, oh, because I've been with this book forever, I've been writing it for and whatever for 2 years, so I'm just used to.
Well, that's not long. But I've got a friend who traditionally published. It takes her 5 years to write one book. I mean, she writes thrillers as well, but I mean, thrillers have much more complicated plots than most other books.
Yeah, I read somewhere about if you want to write a twisted, clever plot, you have to be clever in the first place to think of it. I was like, yeah, that's so true. If you can't think of it, you can't write it. It doesn't write itself. So yeah.
Yeah.
How did you find the jump from writing non-fiction to fiction?
Well, I'd written quite a lot of fiction beforehand. I just hadn't done much with it, so I didn't find that difficult. But actually, I did an online course just sort of get me back into the sort of swing of, because obviously with journalism, you're usually writing 1,000 words, which is obviously very difficult, very different to 80 or 90,000 words. And I mean, the structure is sort of essentially the same. You've got the beginning, the middle, and the end, but obviously it's a completely different way of doing it. So, but I had done it before, and it's something I'd always loved doing. So it was, it wasn't a hardship, or at least I was, it was something I was prepared to work really hard at.
I've heard other journalists before say that it makes their background in journalism makes them more disciplined, and that they find it easier to actually sit down and write because they're so used to having to write to deadlines.
Yeah, there is that, and it also teaches you not to be so precious about your words. All the sort of kill your darlings thing. I mean, when you've got 5,000 words and you've got to cut it down to 1,000, and you've got really, really lovely quotes, because I always would start something with a quote, and then usually end it with a quote. And when you've got, well, either sort of fairly mediocre quotes, and you're thinking, oh God, well, none of them are very good, which one am I going to use? Or even worse, when you've got fantastic quotes and you're thinking, oh God, no, I've got to use that one to start it with. No, I can't. And oh no, I've got to cut that out. And I've still got to lose another, I don't know, 300 words. It's really, really hard. So it does teach you to be disciplined and, as I said, not be too precious about what you write.
Yeah. Yeah, luckily Rampart Books edited mine, and they didn't cut too much out, but there are a few things that I was gutted that went, but I knew when I sent it off that they would, but yeah. But yeah, that's fine. How do you choose your character names?
Well, Suki actually came because I was watching, my partner's got a camper van and we go a lot away, a fair amount in it. And I was watching Paul Merton and his wife had this program about going away, and it wasn't their camper van, but they were sponsored, paid to do it. I think it was on Channel 5. And his wife is called Suki. And as sort of bits of the beginning of the rescue are autobiographical, the rest isn't. But I didn't want to call the character Sue, but Suki seemed, Suki and I sort of look vaguely alike. And well, no, we don't actually. We're both dark. She's got long dark hair, but anyway, in character we're probably a bit alike. And so I just thought Suki would do. And as for Ted, I can't remember where Ted came from. I think I just try and, when I'm thinking of the character, I think about, it's trying to find a name that fits the character and what they do. And if I get stuck, I used to work checking people onto cruise ships years ago, and I kept a passenger list, which is really useful because sometimes there's some really unusual names. And you think, oh, that would really suit so and so. And it's quite nice having names that are, not that I've done it with this particular book, but and Ben, I'd always liked Ben, and actually my youngest brother's called Ben. That's in the one I'm doing at the moment. So yeah, I don't know really. They just sort of come, don't they, when you're thinking about this or I'm looking at the books in my bedroom at the moment. I don't quite know where anyway, they've got to suit the character, haven't they?
Yes, oh definitely, yeah. I've been looking at credits on TV programs and films.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, because there's some cool names. People that work in TV and film have got some cool names.
Yeah. Yes, we were watching something. No, I was watching something at home last week, and that I think it was Italian, so it had incredible names.
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing something with like people trafficking and stuff. So I'm going to need some maybe Russian names. So I think
Oh yeah, or yeah, or Eastern European anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, luckily I've got half a book to write yet before I even think about that, so it's fine. What was I gonna? Oh, can you tell us about spoilers? One of the most fun scenes that you wrote, and what one of the most difficult scenes was?
Sorry, what was the first one?
What one of the most fun scenes to write was?
Oh, fun scenes,
Mm.
and one of the most difficult. Well, in the rescue, the most difficult one was the bit where my husband died, which was obviously, well, it's understandably difficult. One of the most fun scenes was my editor said, I think you should have a sex scene in here, Sue, between Moll and another dog, because she has to realise the importance and the power of sex for Suki. And unless you've read the book, you won't know what I mean. But and I thought, and I sort of laughed and said, oh yeah, good idea. And then I sat down and thought, how the hell do you write a sex scene between dogs and make it believable? So that was, but it was actually great fun. And it always makes people laugh.
Oh, not the sort of thing you thought you would be researching, I imagine.
No,
Oh
no.
dear.
And when I do quite a lot of talks, and I have to sort of gauge the audience quite carefully before I read that one out. I've got various sort of pages that I can read, and I did read it out at a talk last Monday, and I was thinking before I went, because obviously you don't know what the people are going to be like until you get there, and I was looking at them, and they laughed a lot, and they were sort of youngish, well, not young, but young enough to find sex funny, and so I thought, okay, I'll give it a go, and luckily they loved it.
Oh, superb! I love it. Did you have to do much research for the books?
For the books, not so much for the rescue. For Lainey's Tale, I did, because one of the characters, well, Lainey and one of the characters have PTSD, so I had to do a lot of research about PTSD and the effects of music on, because music's very good at helping troubled dogs, and it's also very, very useful for people with PTSD or any sort of music can bring you down, bring you up. It can calm you down. It can make you much worse. Obviously you've got to pick the right bit of music to do what you want to do. But that was really interesting because I sing in a choir and I know how I feel when I've been singing. So there was that. And the book I'm writing at the moment is about a mother and daughter, and the daughter has anorexia. And I had anorexia many, many years ago, and I was very ill with it. And so I had to do a lot of research into what the treatment is nowadays, which hasn't changed. It has changed, but not hugely. And the sort of thing, what influences there are nowadays, which obviously social media is a massive influence, and usually only to the detriment. And things like, waiting lists, NHS, dealing with CAMS, all that sort of mental health, adolescent mental health service. So there's been a lot of research about that, which has been really tough to do, and talking to a couple of mums about their daughters who were very poorly, and that was really hard. So yeah, fair bit of research.
But yeah, it's quite heartbreaking to learn quite how badly off the mental health services are in this country, and for kids,
yeah,
horrific. I know a few people that struggle, and it's broken. It really is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's yeah. Well, better not go down that one at the moment, but yes, it is.
Yes, indeed, yeah. Because I suffer from depression and anxiety, so I touch on mental health as well, because I think you have to. It's so common.
Yes.
And books are a reflection of life in some way. So
yeah,
and it's personal to me, so I wanted to make sure that I included it. But yeah, if I got onto my soapbox about the mental health services,
Yeah.
no longer be a crime book. It would be true to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't. We just don't. um, do you include any secret jokes, messages, or Easter eggs in your book that only a few people would understand?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the whole concept of anorexia is pretty unbelievable. So, so that in itself is really difficult to explain. But it's not really what I call a joke. So no is the answer to that.
If you're able to spend a day with any author, alive or dead, who would you like to spend a day with?
Well, I've just been watching a very old interview with Daphne du Maurier, and she was my age, actually, well, a bit younger than me when she did the interview, and it was really interesting. And what made me laugh was it was at Kilmarth, which was the second house she lived in, and she lived another 20 years or so after having done the interview. But I've always loved her books. And she took the interviewer on a walk, the walk that she did with her dogs every day. You could tell when they were starting off that he was not a walker. And by the time they came back, she was prancing around, like skipping over stiles and this sort of thing, And he was going, God, I was exhausted. What's with you? She was a good sort of 30 years older than him. And that made me laugh. But it was very interesting hearing about her. I mean, there's a brilliant biography of her by Margaret Forster, which I read before doing my book on Walks in the Footsteps of Daphne du Maurier. She was such a fascinating woman. So I would love to have met her. And another writer I really admire is Jojo Moyes, and I would have thought she'd be fascinating to talk to as well.
Have you met many other authors?
What famous ones, you mean?
Or
Well, I belong to a really good writing group. So Ros Watkins is a friend of mine, and Liz Fenwick, though she doesn't turn up very much, and a writer called Jane Cable and Claire Peat. So that's sort of local friends who are writers in Falmouth. Michelle Cartledge, she's a wonderful children's writer and illustrator. And Malcolm and I were in, where were we? Newland the other day, Mousel, and having a cup of coffee. And she suddenly popped up and said, "Oh, hello, Sue," because I interviewed her yonks ago. And she hasn't changed at all. I must have seen her about 15 years ago. And I thought, my God, how do you do it? So, yeah, I've met quite a lot of writers through doing what I do and events and stuff.
Yeah, it's a lovely community, isn't it? It really is wonderful to
yeah.
Everyone says the crime community is the nicest because they'll get their anger and everything else out on the page.
Very therapeutic.
Are you doing any events over the summer?
Events. I've got another talk next week down in St. Just. I'm doing about a talk a month at the moment until the end of the year. And then there's a writing festival, sort of conference thing in Falmouth in October, which I'm hoping to be part of. So I think that's it at the moment. I'm not quite sure what else, things come up and I say, yes, I'll do something or whatever. So yeah, I try not to do more than one talk a month because I start boring myself. But yeah, a few things coming up.
If you're able to travel to any period of time, either forwards or backwards, where would you like to go?
I wouldn't really like to go forwards, to be honest. I'm going to, for either the next book or the book after, I've got to research the 70s, which was when I was a teenager. So I'm going to have to research that to write the book comprehensively. Yeah, I suppose, I mean, life was a lot simpler in many ways before the advent of the World Wide Web and social media, etc. But we won't go down that one either. Yeah, so I guess I should say the 70s because I'm going to have to do that anyway.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm lucky enough to be able to remember a time before the internet as well. So I'm grateful that I've got that. Although I did have a very depressing conversation with a girl at uni because I went back to uni when I was older.
Oh, yeah.
And she was 20. And she said, how did you used to do your homework before the internet? And it was a genuine question. I was just like, I'm so old.
Not nearly as old as me.
Not quite, but it wasn't fun. I was like, we went to the library. Like, where do we spend most of our time anyway? We go to the library. The same as we just didn't have the computers there as well. We just had books.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a depressing day. Generally, I didn't feel older until then. Bless her. She's in my book actually. She's very funny.
Oh, good. When do you... Sorry, yeah, carry on.
I've forgotten now. What was I going to ask you? What was I going to ask? Oh, would you consider writing in any other genres?
Never say never.
Okay.
I wouldn't do science fiction, but I've done non-fiction and now fiction. And I couldn't write a really sort of gory thriller because I'm not that sort of person. And I couldn't write anything that involved injury to animals. But actually, a friend of mine, Ros, who writes pretty gory thrillers, she can't stand anything where animals are injured. Humans, fine, but not animals.
Yeah, we're weird as humans, aren't we? Yeah, it's like the golden rule of any films and books, I think, is don't kill the animals, whatever it is, especially the dogs. But
yeah,
we can see babies and adults, hundreds of them be killed and we're fine, but touch the dog and then no one's interested.
Exactly.
It is odd. It is quite funny, but it's true. So yeah. I wouldn't ever hurt an animal in a book.
No.
I kill and torture people, that's fine.
Yeah,
quite enjoy doing that.
Yep.
But animals never.
Very therapeutic.
Really is. It's so much fun. I'm lovely, I promise. I'm not all twisted. I'm very nice. Yeah. It's so you keep getting sidetracked and I keep forgetting what I was going to ask you next. Would you ever like to write with anyone else?
Oh, I think I'd find that quite difficult, but it depends who it was. I think you've got to be able to get on a very deep level, I think. And I think you've got to be able to respect the other person. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question, that. Possibly, but,
I know my husband and wife duo that one writes in a shed in the garden and one writes, I think, in the attic.
That's quite a good idea.
And I think they email each other. Yeah, so they seem to make it work. I mean, I've read one of their books and it was very good, so they must work somehow. But yeah, they're literally as far away as they physically can be from each other.
That sounds quite a good idea.
It makes me laugh. I remember what I was going to ask you. What do you read when you get the chance to read?
Well, at the moment, I'm reading my book for book group, and I'm just trying to find. I'll find it at the moment. Anyway, I'm reading that, and then I ran out of things to read at the weekend because I finished. I've been reading a thriller by Lisa Jewell, the name of which escapes me, but anyway, and I found this one called The Binding, which is about a bookbinder. It's a novel. It's very weird, actually. Anyway, I'm reading that, and the one for our book group, which is in a couple of weeks, so I need to crack on and finish that one. So I read also. Oh, and I'm also rereading Hadley Freeman's extremely good book about anorexia. So I've got all sorts of things on the go.
Oh, I couldn't do that. I can have an audio book and a physical book, and that's it. I couldn't do any more. I'd lose my way.
Oh, right.
Is The Binding, is that a thriller as well?
No. Well, it's sort of it's sort of quite scary in parts, and someone's just died rather than been killed. I don't think. It's sort of similar to, or they say similar to Sarah Waters' books or Philip Pullman.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It's a rich Gothic entertainment. So that gives you a rough idea about it.
Sounds good, actually.
And it's a very hefty book. It's got, how many pages it got? Got over 400 pages, got about 450 pages, which is big for a novel.
Yeah, it's big. I didn't never used to mind a big book, but now I have so many to read. I'm like, I look at it, I'm like, oh.
Oh yeah, that would really put me off. And typeface as well. I hate small typefaces. This is it's okay, but it's on the small side. I wouldn't want it any smaller.
And do you have any treasured or collectible books, any signed ones, or is there a book you'd grab first in a fire?
I love all Mary Wesley's books. Oh, she was someone I would love to have met. No, I haven't got any valuable books actually. I mean, they're valuable to me, but they're not, not valuable, monetarily valuable. Oh, hello, this is Lainey. Hello, sweetheart. Hello. Hello.
No.
Yeah, I know. This is Donna. Every evening she has a frozen Kong, and she's wondering where it is because she hasn't had it yet.
I know, they know their times, don't they?
They do. They do. They
Yeah,
do. Indeed.
Trixie's terrible. She knows exactly when she's supposed to be fed.
Yeah. Oh, she's had her tea, but this is her evening treat.
yeah, Trixie she had hers. She was sitting down there. Yeah, she knows.
It's all right. We're just wrapping up. Is that all right?
Yeah, well, I can't think of any more questions or anything unless there's anything obvious that I haven't asked you that you want to tell us about.
No, I don't think so. Well, if there is, I'll email you.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, when the next book comes out, we can do this again anyway. I'm happy.
Oh, that's lovely, Donna. Thanks very much indeed. You're going to carry on with the blogging, are you?
Yeah, well, I'll try to.
I mean, yeah. Well, yeah, because that's a lot of work, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, and luckily, while I've been off work, I've read so many books, and I finally managed to catch up on books I've wanted to read for ages, which has been lovely.
That's good.
So yeah, obviously when I start my new job, I'm not going to be able to do that so much, but yeah, I think I should be able to manage to do both. Hopefully, we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Well, keep in touch and do let me know. Well, I'll probably see you on social media, but do let me know when your book comes out.
Yes, thank you. And before we go, would you like to just remind everyone where they can get your books from and where they can contact you if they so wish?
Yes, my books are available on Amazon and through my website, which is www.suekittow, that's KITTOW.com. And my email, all my contact links are on my website. And I'm on Facebook as Sue Kittow and Sue Jackson, and Twitter, which is @floweringpot, and Instagram _Cornish_author. So thank you very much for having me, Donna. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Yes, thank you too.
All right then, you take care.
See.
Bye-bye.